What's up, guys? Dick of Matchday. I want to talk about the big matches from this weekend in the Premier League. Of course, I do want to apologize real quick for not releasing one last week. For some reason, it just completely slipped my mind for most of the week. Then I realized I didn't do it Friday, and by that time it was already too late, so I just didn't release one. So that's not going to happen again, guys. I do apologize, but yeah, that's this. It was just all on me as always. But let's go ahead and talk about the big matches that went on throughout the entire weekend because it was an insane weekend of football. Starting off with Aston Villa versus Everton, which finished 2-0 for Aston Villa. And this is just another one of those performances where Aston Villa are a real team. Like, we can say, they just came up, they have some weaknesses and all that stuff. But listen, against Tottenham, they were winning 1-0 until like the 80th minute, more or less. So this is a team that's very dangerous. They can hold their own against the top dogs. And like they showed against Everton yesterday, who are one of the best teams in the league, definitely one of the teams that are competing, at least on paper, for that 6th, 7th, 8th spot. This is a very, very good team in Everton, and Aston Villa beat them 2-0. So this is a match that really has to give Aston Villa a lot of confidence, especially for that Tottenham performance from a couple weeks ago as well. This has to kind of show them, that this is a team that is capable of not just staying in the Premier League, but actually doing a pretty good job. This is a team that's looking like they could actually finish around 12th, so around mid-table. So that's actually a very, very positive start back to life in the Premier League for a team like Aston Villa, who don't have Axel Tuanzebe, who don't have Tammy Abrams. So they lost some of their better players, and yet they're still doing some very, very good work. And interesting about Everton is Moise Kean still isn't really doing much. I think he's definitely one of the most high-talented players, or highest potential players in the Premier League in terms of really young guys. So I do expect him to explode eventually, but as of right now, just really nothing's really coming up of his career, especially after that disaster that was the under-21 World Cup for him this summer, where he unfortunately did a bunch of dumb shit, and it cost him. So we'll see if maybe he has some mental issues going on right now, maybe has some mental blocks. We'll see, but if he can become the player that we know he can become, then he's going to be a very, very solid player for Everton. But right now, it's not really working for them. But it could just be a blip. It could just be maybe Aston Villa having a great performance and Everton not performing really well. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch the match. So I'm not going to go too much into detail about it, but definitely a big win for Aston Villa. Next up, we have Brighton losing against Southampton 2-0 at home, of course with a red card, so that does kind of take things, that's something to take into consideration. Unfortunately, this is another match I didn't get to see, because a lot of them are either played at times where I'm watching a different game, or I simply just can't watch the match. So this is one of those. And I will say, Southampton, they had a very, very good performance against Liverpool last weekend. Like, make no mistake about it, they could have won that game. They were putting a beating on Liverpool. So there was absolutely no reason to think that they weren't going to have a decent performance here against Brighton, who are an infinitely inferior team compared to Liverpool. So I think Southampton, coming into the season, a lot of people, myself included, really, were kind of listing them as one of those teams that are very likely to be in a relegation battle. But after seeing what they did against Liverpool, and of course a nice little 2-0 win away from home against a tough team like Brighton, who don't have the best players, but they're a very, very solid and consistent team, that's a good result. So Southampton are looking like they could potentially be surprisers. They could potentially spoil a few people's matches as well. So we'll see what happens. Southampton are an interesting team. They're a club that if you'd had told me a couple of years ago they'd be this bad, or at least on paper this bad, I wouldn't have believed you, because based on how good their youth system is and the amount of players that they've been selling to huge clubs and stuff like that for huge amounts of money, I never would have thought they'd be in this type of situation. But they're kind of, they're fighting their way through. So if they can continue to get some results like this throughout the season against rivals who are potentially going to be around there throughout the entire season, then that's going to be a pretty solid thing for fucking Southampton, sorry. And I think that they're going to have a very, very surprising start to the season. Whether they'll maintain that or not remains to be seen, but so far so good. Next up, we have Watford losing 1-3 against West Ham at home at the Hawthorn Stadium. So this is a pretty bad loss for Watford, because West Ham have not looked good to start the season. Of course, that 5-0 destruction by Man City wasn't necessarily shocking, but it was surprising in my opinion, because West Ham are a club that on paper have some really good players, and I don't think that they have such a weakness to their team to where that's going to happen very often. I think it was probably just like a one-off, but I would have expected them to do a lot better against teams like Watford, of course. But so there's no shame in that for Watford, but it is worrying because at home, this is where Watford need to be shining. like all teams, of course, but Watford in particular are a club that they're going to be fighting for a relegation battle, so they need to get as many points as possible against a team like West Ham. Like I said, haven't really had a great start, so they needed to get a result here, and they didn't. So it's a tough one, but I think that Watford, they have some decent players there, so if they can get them playing, if they can get them to perform decently, then I think they'll have enough to survive. But it remains to be seen. Like I said, I will be doing a full prediction video. I think next week, or in about 5 days, because I'm waiting for the entire European transfer window to end. That way I can know exactly who's going to be where, and maybe certain players leave or certain players come in. Not come in, but leave. So I have to take that into consideration, like maybe Pogba or stuff like that. So I will be doing that very soon. But regardless, I think that Watford, it's just a spoiler. I think they are a team that can survive, but they need to start getting some results quickly, some solid results at home. That's what they need. So West Ham, I think, yes, they're a difficult team, but when you're playing against them at home, I think they're a team you can definitely beat. And I think that Watford had the tools to do it. Moving on, we have Liverpool versus Arsenal, and this is a match that, yes, I think was a lot more open than the result might say, but a result that wasn't surprising in the least bit. Because you think at what's Liverpool good at? Well, they're very good offensively. They're dynamic offensively, and they can play in a lot of different ways. What about Arsenal? What's their strengths? Attacking. No doubt about that, attacking. What's Liverpool's biggest weakness? Their midfield. Arsenal's biggest weakness is their defense, and their midfield isn't that much better. So, realistically, Liverpool are much better attacking. They're much better defending. And in midfield, I would say that they are slightly better than Arsenal, probably, because Arsenal just really don't have much for them in terms of midfield as well. Because Mkhitaryan didn't play, Lacazette didn't play, so they didn't have some of their better players. But there was an opportunity when I think it was still 0-0, where Pepe was one-on-one with the keeper, and he had a phenomenal run where he got past 3 or 4 defenders, got face-to-face with the keeper, and he just blew it. He just completely blew it, and I don't know, if he had scored that goal, who knows? Maybe things would have been different. Maybe Arsenal could have closed themselves down. Unai Emery is pretty decent at that, so, you never know. They could have tried to close out a lot of space and not really let Liverpool through. The problem is, when your best defender is David Luiz, it's not exactly good. David Luiz, he's an okay defender. He's experienced, but he's definitely not reliable, number one. He's definitely not intelligent, number two, and he's just not really that great. He's an okay guy, but he's not somebody you can really rely on. So, I don't know. I think that Arsenal, coming into this match, I didn't think they were going to win. I didn't think they would get a result, but I did think they'd actually perform a lot better than I thought they would, because like I said, the result, yes, it's really bad. It's a 3-1 loss, but realistically, Arsenal were in this game pretty much from start to finish. Salah, of course, scored a penalty, which David Luiz, in his ever-stupid fashion, just pulled his shirt and then went on to claim that he didn't think it was a penalty, which I'm anti-Scouser as much as you want, but to say that wasn't a penalty is just stupid. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So David Luiz, of course, is on his usual bullshit. But it was just in general, I think the Arsenal's defense is not going to carry them very well this season. Whereas, like, you look at Chelsea, for example, defensively they're a shambles right now, but they still have Rudiger coming back. So, and of course, Kante's not in full form. So they will improve, whereas Arsenal, this is what they have. And they're not looking good at all. So I don't expect much from Arsenal in terms of defending. Offensively, they're still very dangerous, but I think that a lot of these teams can really beat them. Liverpool, I think, of course, showed that they can beat them. I think City will beat them. I think Tottenham will probably beat them next week, to be honest, because, of course, Tottenham's having a bad week, is having a bad start to the season, a draw and a loss. They're, of course, on par with United with goal difference, but, like, realistically, Tottenham, I think, have what it takes to beat Arsenal. I think they will beat Arsenal. So it's going to be an interesting match. Arsenal, they look good offensively, but just bad defensively. So that's going to plan to plague them. And, of course, no shock for Liverpool getting the win here. But you never know, man. This could be Liverpool's year because City haven't been playing very well. They're, like, under their standards in a pretty big way. Against Tottenham, they actually played phenomenal football, but they just weren't able to put the ball in the back of the net. There were some issues, of course, between Aguero and Guardiola. We'll see how that plays out. It didn't seem like there were any issues this weekend, but we'll see how things progress. But yeah, I think it's still going to be Liverpool versus City until the very end. I do think City will win, so spoiler alert there. But I think that Arsenal, they still lack a few things. I think that Liverpool kind of exposed them in a pretty big fashion there. Next up, we have the surprise of the week. Well, I don't know if it's the surprise of the weekend, but it's on par. Actually, no, I would say this is the surprise of the weekend by far. All right, it's Tottenham losing 1-0 to Newcastle, and this is a performance that I didn't get to see, unfortunately. I just didn't get to see the match, unfortunately. I was working. I didn't have time to watch it, unfortunately. But regardless, like, it's the type of game where you fully expect Tottenham just go out there and destroy Newcastle, especially because Tottenham were at home. And it just goes to show you, man, like, this new stadium, it's not White Hart Lane. They have the same issues they had at Wembley, where they had a bad start at Wembley. So we'll see if they can continue to struggle, or if maybe they'll pull themselves out of it right now. But this was a bad result against a Newcastle team that is looking like they are very much in the running to be relegated. So I don't know if this is just a matter of a fluke, because like I said, I didn't see the match. I didn't see how the match actually went, like if Tottenham was dominating or what. But this is a very, very big worrying sign for Tottenham, because coming into this season, everybody thought, look, listen, Tottenham didn't really improve their team in a crazy way. They got their midfield, they got much better with Lo Celso and Dembele. So yes, they improved, but they didn't improve in crazy fashion. They also didn't lose anybody that's like major. They lost Trippier, but that's not too big, so not a big deal there. So Tottenham didn't get that much stronger, but they didn't get any weaker as well. So you figured, having gained experience from being in the Champions League final, having realized that they have what it takes to beat City, to beat Liverpool, all these teams, or at least compete with Liverpool, then I think, or at least for the most part, pretty much everybody thought that this was going to be a year that Tottenham could actually do something. But based on the start of the season, they still seem to have the same immature issues. They still seem to have that lack of consistency that they've had over the past few years, where they could definitely be a top 2 team if they just maintain their consistency, but they always blow it. They always blow it in the matches that you don't expect them to blow it. They do well against the big teams, but they blow it in the matches that you don't expect them to blow it. So, I don't know. Tottenham just continue to have some issues. I think they're still a very dangerous team. I do still think they will finish 3rd, but as of right now, they're still looking like a team that has the capabilities of blowing it when you don't expect it. Next up, we have Norwich versus Chelsea, which was a phenomenal match. A 3-2 win for Chelsea, and I was definitely pulling for Norwich to steal one here. But Chelsea, gotta give credit where credit is due. Offensively, they have looked actually really solid this entire season. Like so far, you figure the game against United, they could have easily been 2-1 up by the time Rashford scored the penalty. They hit the post twice. They could have easily won that game or gotten a draw. So you have to say that offensively, they are a very, very good team. Against Liverpool as well, they did a very good job in the Super Cup, creating a lot of chances and taking, of course, the penalties. Last week in the Premier League, I can't remember who they played, but they had a lot of great chances and they just weren't able to finish it. And then, of course, this match, Tammy Abrams finally got himself on the score sheet after blowing a lot of chances against United, blowing a lot of chances against Liverpool. He finally got himself a couple of goals, actually. So it's going to be a big confidence boost for him. I think it's going to be a confidence boost for Chelsea in general, and they definitely needed it. And like I said earlier, with Rudiger coming back eventually, their defense is only going to improve, whereas offensively they're going to continue to gel. And I think they do have some pretty solid talent there. Mount looks like a phenomenal player. Abrams, yes, he hasn't scored a lot of the chances that he's had, but you could tell his positioning is solid. His intelligence is there. His pace is there. His physicality is there. He just needs to kind of be a bit better at being more clinical. So if he can do that, then he's going to be a very dangerous striker for Chelsea. And Chelsea are going to be a pretty solid team, I think, in the future, once they can bring in a couple of pieces here to really add some experience to an already dynamic and a team that could realistically be dangerous in the future. So look out for Chelsea. They could surprise some people here. I don't think they're going to finish in the top 4, but I think they could definitely surprise a few people with some decent performances here and there. Moving forward, we have United, of course, blowing it against Crystal Palace, which I was going to say was the most surprising result until I realized that Tottenham had lost against Newcastle. And I can, honestly, when I saw that yesterday, that Tottenham had lost to Newcastle, I was just in shock. But when it comes to United, I wouldn't have expected us to lose to Crystal Palace, but it's not the most surprising thing in the world, because we tend to blow it. We just do. We just tend to blow it against these easy opposition. Never in a fucking lifetime should United lose to Crystal Palace at Old Trafford. It just shouldn't happen, especially against a guy like Roy Hodgson, who's been managing since 1973. He literally everything he does is just played out. Everybody knows what he's going to do. He has no style. He has no alternative styles. He just pretty much parked the bus and waited for us to make mistakes. Lindelof got absolutely hammered. Just a ridiculous thing. If you want, you can check out the video I actually did about that entire match. I went a lot more in depth about that match in that video. But this match was very disappointing for United, of course. Dominated possession, but didn't really do much with it. We should have scored a few of the chances we had. We should have had a couple of penalties, more than we actually had, by the way. So VAR is just, honestly, it's just an absolute joke. And that's just not even me just complaining. That's just me being realistic. I've been saying this forever. VAR is a joke ever since it was introduced to Serie A and all that stuff. Because realistically, things can be changed. The calls can be changed. But it's still up to referees' interpretation. It's not a band of referees saying this is a penalty or something like that. This is one man still making the final decision, and he's made they made some shit decisions in this match. I think that there definitely could have been a couple penalties more for United. So it's just ridiculous. But regardless, there's no reason in the fucking world that United should be unable to beat Crystal Palace no matter what happens with the referees, no matter what happens with injuries. We should be smashing them every single time and just lighting them the fuck up. And yet, we somehow managed to lose at Old Trafford against Crystal fucking Palace for the first time in the Premier League. So, it's embarrassing. It was really embarrassing, and it's a very, very poor start now. Because if you'd have said, we beat Chelsea 4-0, we drew away from home against Wolves, but playing some excellent football, I would have been like, all right, that's a good start of the season. That's 4 points that were definitely not guaranteed against tough teams. So we pulled it out, and we had a very, very solid start of the season. But then you lose to Crystal Palace. That's just unacceptable. Unacceptable. So things need to change. Ollie, like I said in the video, which you should definitely check it out if you want to see more in depth about that. Ollie completely blew, just absolutely fucked up the selection for the team, and he got absolutely outdone by Roy fucking Hodgson somehow, but it happened. Hopefully the team will learn from that and improve, but not looking good as of right now. Next up, we have Sheffield United losing 2-1 to Leicester City, and this is a game that I didn't get to see, once again, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but Leicester, they're a team that definitely should be beating Sheffield. You know, they're a dangerous team. On the break, they're very dangerous. They actually have some really solid players throughout the entire pitch, really, so this is a game I expect them to win, and they are definitely going to be one of those teams that are going to be competitive for a potential Europa League spot. I don't think they'll actually reach it. I think that United and Chelsea and Arsenal will still finish above them, but I think that they are definitely a team that has the potential of finishing around those spots. Next up, we have Bournemouth versus Man City, which I saw the first half entirely. I saw about the last half of the second half, so I missed a portion of it. But regardless, you know, Man City doing what they have to do. Like, they didn't have a great performance in terms of, like, a huge result, which we'd expect from City, but they had enough of it to get a win. And realistically, they were winning 2-0 before Bournemouth scored 1. So it was just a solid, well-rounded performance from City as always. Nothing special. Definitely not for their standards, but, you know, business as always. They got the W, got the 3 points. So hats off to them for continuing to mount a decent title challenge. I definitely expect them to win the title, unfortunately, but you know, there's no shame in drawing against Tottenham 2-2, especially the way that they did it, just playing excellent football. So I think that moving forward, they're going to continue to batter teams, and they're just going to be too good for pretty much anybody to beat this season. Like, realistically, unless, you know, it's going to be like the Big Six, then I don't really see anybody really touching them. So no surprise here. Last up, we have Wolves versus Burnley, which finished 1-1. And let me tell you, like, these are two teams that I think that are somewhat even in the sense that both do very different things, but they both do what they do very well. Burnley are a team that gets undervalued consistently and underestimated very, very consistently, but they have a lot of talented players. They play a very physical brand of football, so they have what it takes to kind of surprise just about any team, and I think that they can definitely shock a lot of people. So can Wolves, though. Wolves are, without a doubt, one of the top 7 or 8 best teams in England. They dismantled Torino in the Europa League, of course. They finished 3-2. So it wasn't really dismantling in terms of result, but like Wolves have been consistently showing that they are a very dangerous team, and I fully expect them to do well in the Europa League. I think they will still knock out Torino, and I think that they will do a pretty good job in the Premier League as well. We'll see how they manage to deal with the Europa League plus Premier League duties, but they signed 11 players this summer, so I think they're going to still be perfectly fine in terms of roster, and I think that they'll do a very, very good job basically the entire season. I think that Burnley can do a pretty similar thing. I don't think they're going to finish in the Europa League spots. I think they have a lot less of a chance of doing so. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as consistent, but they're still a very dangerous team, and people would do very, very wrong to underestimate them and not give them credit for being a very dangerous team. Like we saw at Old Trafford last year when I was there at the stadium. 2 counterattacks, 2 goals for Burnley. They created a lot of chances. This is a team that has the potential to hurt just about anybody, and if they get the opportunity, they're probably going to take it. So 1-1 draw. It's not the best result for either team, much like the 1-1 draw the Wolves had with Leicester, but it's still not a bad result either. So I think the Wolves are sitting pretty on 3 points right now, which is definitely not great after 3 matches, but they will definitely continue to move on because, of course, you figure they had 3 tough matches, whereas a lot of other teams are just having some easy ones. So it makes sense for them to be kind of struggling right now, but I think as time goes on, they're only going to improve, and they're going to be definitely battling among United, Arsenal, and Chelsea for that top 4 spot. No, not top 4 spot, sorry. For that top 6 spot, as well as maybe Leicester being in there as well. So that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of all the things I talked about, which teams you think are gonna be able to get themselves towards the Europa League spots, and who do you think, as of right now, having seen the first 3 matches, are likely relegation candidates. So if you guys enjoyed the video, please smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.